Okay, good morning everybody. It's Peter here from AJS, and once again we're stepping into a jeweler's workshop somewhere around Australia. And this week we're going to the South Island, and we're with the lovely Kirra-lea. Welcome back, Kirra-lea.
Hi.
Good to have you back. And once again we're doing another adventure in sand casting. And this week it's cast in place faceted stones rub over setting. Kirra-lea,
That's
would you
right.
like to explain to me and everybody else what that's all about?
Yeah. So literally how it sounds is, so like a rub-in setting or a rub over setting, I should say. Like when you've got a tube and you've bezel set a stone in place. That's what we're going to be doing, but in the sand. Just because maybe you don't like setting. Yeah. It's just another thing you can do. Another thing I can show you to do. I personally find that the like doing a bezel setting is fairly easy. So most of the time I'll just opt to do it after I've cast, but sometimes it's fun to give a little bit of a flex and do it in the sand casting.
Excellent. Okay, so what tools are we going to be using today, Julie?
What tools?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. So I'm going to be using Delft clay, which you can get from AJS, and I've got my modified flask, which we won't actually be using the hole I've cut in the side of it today. We're just going to be pouring through the clay. So that's horizontal style, like horizontal orientation casting is what I've dubbed it. Made that up myself.
Surprise.
Yeah. Yeah. And so these are my objects that I'm going to cast in place today. So there's two ways I've discovered so far of being able to do the bezel setting. So you've got your object, and in this case, it's a pretty little flower, but it would look awesome with a stone right in the middle of it. But instead of just having it cast in place like flush style or maybe grains, I think it would look really cute set in a little rub over, in a little bezel set. So I'll show you how to do that on an existing design, which is really straightforward and easy. And then the next one is going to be, if you've got a tube setting like that and you've got it inside a design and you want the stone to be, in there. This is a little bit trickier and a little bit fiddlier. I just get very excited about learning how to do different things and expanding what I can do and figuring out what I can't do with casting in place. With the rub over settings, like the bezel style setting, to be honest, just setting it after you've cast is probably the best way of doing it, but not everybody can, I guess. I like to do it cast in place sometimes because I like to explore what I can and can't do. So I think it's a bit fun to sort of be able to do it, to think of something.
Yeah. Stretching yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wouldn't really say it's going to make your practice more efficient if you learn how to do this. It might work in some situations for you that it'll be just the perfect solution for a problem that you've got with casting, perhaps. It's just a bit of fun. It's just another thing you can do with cast in place stones, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's the most efficient way to set a stone. It's just a bit of fun. It's a bit of a, like, oh, look what I can do sort of situation. But I'll run through it today anyway, because maybe something that I'm mentioning or running over will be relevant to another problem you've got, and it might present some sort of solution. Maybe. We'll see.
Excellent. I've got a nice crew watching us at the moment, Kirra-lea, so I'll invite everyone just to say where you're from, and that'd be lovely to have you join in. And
yes, please.
Get things underway. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. All right. So we have our flask. And as I've said, I've cut this giant hole in the side of it so that I can do vertical orientation casting, which is boring through the side. But today we're not going to be doing any of that. We're just going to be casting it in the horizontal orientation, casting through the clay. But as always, we start with the male side first. So that's the side with the lip. That's the outie, and this is the innie. So I've recently started calling these like the 1920s couple. So this is the man and then the 1920s wife who can't do anything without her male partner. So you can't fill her separately. She always has to be with her male partner. She is not a contemporary independent woman like we are nowadays. She is very dependent on her male partner. So you always start by packing the male first, loose crumbly bits of clay, and then you can put a handful on top. And using my hammer, I just compress that clay. So at this stage, I would not go fill my female separately. My 1920s housewife cannot do anything by herself. I can't go pack her. I have to only pack her when she's on top of her male partner. So we'll leave her empty for now. She's not doing anything. I'm going to lay down some talcum powder, baby powder, whatever you want to use, corn flour, baking flour. And let's start off with this little cute button that I found at the op shop just the other day. I'm going to lay that into about the middle and use my ruler to press that button in.
Yeah, Kirra-lea, just while you're doing that, just had a question from Liz, which relates to exactly what you're doing now. Do you find that the fine detail on the original you use for the thing being cast is maintained or sometimes lost?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Just the fine detail, is that maintained from the original to what you're casting?
Yeah, usually. You have to make sure your clay is nice and compacted. The more compacted it is, the better the impression is going to be. If your clay is quite loose and has a lot of give in it, you're not going to pick up all that fine detail. Not as well, anyway. So make sure your clay is nice and compacted. So I put my...
This is brilliant, so thank you for
that. I've put my button in. There's the talcum powder down. That's to stop my button from getting stuck, but also it's going to stop my two clay halves from getting stuck together. So my 1920s housewife has gone on top of her male partner because she can't do anything by herself. All right, now let's pack some clay around that object and then put some handfuls on. So it's always a good idea to get into the habit of putting down your first layer with your fingers and making sure it's nice and compacted around your object. Alrighty, take off any of that excess clay. I like to use my ruler as a knife. Now we've got to open this up, but we don't want to screw it open. We just want to open it nice and evenly. And if for some reason it's wedged closed, use the back of your tweezers because these flasks are designed to have a little gap, which is perfect for your tweezers to just fit in there, and you just wedge it open. All right, it's open. Now I'm not sure you can, whoop, where's the camera? There it is. So it's a little bit hard to see in the clay, but once we cast that, it'll be a lot more obvious. Because this button is quite thin, I'm gonna have to make it deep, like a deeper version of itself, a thicker version of itself. So I'm going to be pressing this button deeper into this side. So instead of having a 2mm button, maybe I'll have a 4mm button. So let's just push that in deeper. Because the silver is pretty lazy, and if it's less than 2mm, it probably won't cast. And because I have a stone in this one, I've got to make sure that the stone is going to be completely cleared. Well, you know, I guess because I'm making a bit of a pendant, doesn't matter. I could have the stone poking through a little bit, but it's a good habit to get into to make sure your stone doesn't poke through your designs. All right, now I've got to try and gently wedge, get that button out. There we go. Some fine nose needle pliers, fine nose tweezers, stone tweezers are really handy for getting in and grabbing your objects out, placing your stones, placing objects. So get yourself one of those. Pretty sure they're at AJS. like everything. Alrighty, now this is the stage where you've got to curb your excitement and not go place stones yet. You've got some more work to do. So let's get out the straw. We're going to place our sprue hole and our funnel. So this is a way to let the silver into this design. So I'm going to go from the back. I'm not going to disturb this beautiful front with the pattern. I'm going to leave that to the side. I'm going to disturb the back though. I'm going to pour the metal in through the back. I'm not going to go smack bang in the middle of the back of the button because I want to place my stone smack bang in the middle on the other side. I do not want the metal to be coming straight in on top of my stone with all of that pressure and heat. Firstly, it could act as like a plug and stop the metal from forming properly. Secondly, and more likely, the stone will probably shatter because it's just a little bit too much to ask the stone to put up with. So I'm going to place my sprue on the side. And I'm going to go straight through. So this is a 6mm straw. It is perfect for doing sprue holes because it allows enough metal to go through before it cools. So enough metal, molten metal, is getting into your flask and forming your piece before it cools. Also, it's not so giant that you can't just cut it off with bolt cutters. More than 6mm, it gets a bit of a pain in the bum to cut it off. Less than 6mm, you run the risk of not having your object form. 6mm seems to be just perfect. I'm using my little knifey tool and he's just carving out a funnel. You want this funnel to be deep, so you want it to come down deep, not necessarily wide. Although you are trying to aim for this hole with molten metal. So the bigger the target, maybe the easier it is to hit. I'm going to clean up all of the loose bits of clay with the back of my paintbrush. I use it like a rolling pin, and I'm just consolidating all of those loose bits of clay. You do not want loose clay following your silver into your mold. Firstly, the loose clay might get stuck on the outside of your design. And in this case of this beautiful little flower, if there was a little piece of clay that got stuck on the front here, it would completely ruin that pattern. Another reason to avoid having loose bits of clay is that they can get trapped inside of the metal and become pockets of burnt clay, like a big cavity, a big weak point. And sometimes you don't even know they're there until you're cleaning it up or you're doing the last sort of stages, and then suddenly you hit this cavity and it's just this void of burnt clay and disappointment. So why deal with all of that when you can just clean up your funnel and your sprue hole right here, right now, and avoid all disappointment?
Good tip.
It's a good idea to have your object on hand, because after you've done your sprue hole and your funnel, place your object back in and crisp up that back. You might not be able to see it, but you might have disturbed that clay. There's a very good chance that you have disturbed that clay, even if you can't see it. So it's a really good habit. Just always have your object right there on hand so you can just pop it back in place, give it a really light tap, and make sure that everything is as crisp and beautiful as you first made the mold. Alrighty, I'm going to do an air vent. And it's pretty simple with this one. The metal is going to be poured in here. I'm just going to do an air vent the opposite. So that's my little needle tool here. I'm going to do a line, a little channel, and then I'm going to poke out. There we go. That's my air vent. That's all you need. Your air vent has to always be on the side that your sprue hole and funnel is. So the side that you're pouring the metal in, you need to have an air vent. Let's pop that down and focus on over here. Now I have my piece of chenille or tube, and I have my stone. And I've made sure that my tube is the correct size for my stone. So the stone's just about to fall in, but not quite. So that's pretty perfect. So that is the correct tube for what I'm going to do. And all I'm going to do is use it as an impression. So I'm going to have a look at where the middle of this flower is. Oh yeah, it's about there. I'm going to lay that tube in. And now I'm going to give it a bit of a push and try and do it nice and evenly. Back of the tweezers are great for this because your fingers Fingers not so good. So back at the tweezers, I'm giving it just a really light push. I'm trying to make sure it's as even as possible. So I'm just spinning it around a few times and coming in with the same sort of pressure to make sure that it is hopefully evenly pressed in. Cool. Gently pull that out. And I've got that little impression just there. And see that little mound of clay right in the middle? That's where you're going to place your stone. Let's get out our pawpaw ointment. This is used as a gentle adhesive to make sure your stone doesn't move. You don't have to use pawpaw. You can use Vaseline or any sort of Vaseline type goo. I had someone tell me the other day that they used peanut butter, and they said that worked. Yeah, it must be extra smooth peanut butter, hey, not like crunchy. So you want to get the pawpaw ointment on the table of the stone and try not to get it on your tweezers, because if it gets on your tweezers, the tweezers tend to just want to stick to everything. So I've got some pawpaw on that stone. Now I'm going to place it table down in the middle of that bezel impression. And I'm just going to give it a really gentle push to make sure it's in contact with that clay. All right, so he's moving a little bit too much, which means he doesn't have enough pawpaw on him. So I'm just going to rub him off, get all of the clay and pawpaw that is on him off him, get him nice and clean again. And I'm going to put more pawpaw on him. So if the stone you feel like is moving around too much, it's too easy for it to, you touch it with your tweezers and it sort of rocks. It means there's not enough pawpaw on it. You want it to be fairly solid. I've just put a bit more pawpaw on it. I'm going to place him back down. It could be because there's talcum powder here that the pawpaw is being stuck to the talcum powder and not the clay, and the talcum powder lifts off of the clay. So that could be what was happening right there. I'm just making sure that that stone's in the middle. And now I'm going to give him a little gentle press to make sure he's in contact with that clay wall. We're not pushing him through it though, just in contact. Cool. That's him sitting. Let's open.
Two shout outs to you, one from Guido, who loves your work. He says you're so talented. Jan Carter says lovely detailed work, and Mabel says hello, Kirra. I would like to know what stones are safe to cast in as well.
All right, so when it comes to the stones to cast in place, a good guide is 7.5 and harder on the Mohs hardness scale. But that's just a guide. That's not a rule. Really, what it comes down to is experimenting and trying not to use stones that are too expensive so that you don't get quite upset when they don't work. But some stones that I found were not very hard on the hardness scale were able to be cast in place. Like, what was it called? It's some sort of quartz-based stone, aventurine or something like that. Adventurine. It's not something I work with very often. It was just a request from somebody. It's like a bright green quartz looking stone, and I didn't think it was going to cast in place, but I bought heaps of them and I just gave it a go, and to my surprise they did cast in place without breaking. The color changed a little bit though. It wasn't so bright green after I'd cast it in place, but that makes me think that perhaps it was treated and that it wasn't actually truly that green to begin with. So just give it a go. Just experiment and find out for yourself. I wouldn't go putting aquamarines in or emeralds or something, something from the beryl family is probably not going to work. But in saying that, I've used specimen quality aquamarine and it has cast in place and been fine. Anyway, up to you on how much cash you want to burn experimenting. But it's the best way to learn.
Really, Liz has suggested that it could be aventurine.
Yeah.
AVENTUR.
Inventory, that's it, yeah. Yeah, that was the one that I used and worked fine. But it was rough and it was almost, I guess you'd say, specimen quality. So I don't know if that makes a difference. Cool. All right, just closed and opened that to see if that stone was going to poke into the back of this design here. Sometimes it looks nice having the stone poke through the back. Sometimes it doesn't. It depends on the design. I'm happy that this one's not going to be poking through. That works for me just fine. Also, a good habit to get into is with your thumbs and your fingers underneath, give the two clay halves a little bit of a press. Because I've just pressed that button deeper into one side. Originally, when I made the mold, it was flush and perfect. And then I went and pushed the button deeper into one side. And I may have made the two clay halves separate a little bit. So by pressing on those two, the top part and the bottom part, I'm hoping to just bring them nice and flush together again so that my line of parting is very minimal. Okay, let's give this a go. Let's cast. I'll go on to the other camera now. And I'll get out some silver. Alrighty, what have I got? I think I'll just use that. Safety glasses is important. And I have a size 7 tip on my mini smith. Now, from experience, I think I cut out because it's too noisy. Is that right, Peter? Like my speaking cuts out?
Yeah, it does.
So pretty much what you want to do is get a really hot, fast flame. And sometimes that means you'll have to readjust your regulator so your oxygen is coming out at a higher pressure so that you can get your flame really hot. You pretty much want to take your flame to the point where it's just about to put itself out. It's that ferocious. You want to get your metal really hot. You want to get it to the rolling melt, which means that when you give it a little bit of a shuffle, like it's a stir fry, that silver stays together in a nice lump and it doesn't stick to the edges of the crucible. Then you know you've got a rolling melt and it's ready to pour. And when you do pour, you're going to keep the flame on it the entire time. Even as you're dumping the metal down the hole, keep that flame in position. Want to make sure that metal is at maximum temperature. And you got to chuck it down the hole real quick. Okay, so imagine you're a cowboy, you're in the desert, you're standing off with another cowboy, you've got your guns, and whoever shoots first, okay, like Greedo or Han Solo, who knows, okay? Get it down that hole fast. All right, now you're going to watch me do it. Coolio. All right. Put your mask on because it gets smoky. All right, let's have a look inside. Hopefully that stone is hidden amongst all that burnt clay. Oh, beautiful. Can you see that amongst all the smoke?
Wow.
There it is, perfectly in place. So let's get this out.
Great
And that
job.
texture is quite lovely.
It is. Yeah.
It's picked up all that detail wonderfully. Cool. So pretty much it's the same as doing the flush style casting, except you've just gone and made an extra impression. So it's the same as when we're doing the grain setting. It's not really grain setting, it's just flush with some bead impressions around it, you know? And that's the same with this. It's flush, but you've just put a ring impression around it. So we're making the illusion that these are traditional setting styles, which is all a bit of fun when you tell people how you actually made it. Like I said, it's not necessary. It's not the most efficient way, but gosh, it feels good when it works.
Great job. I'll invite people, if they've got any comments or questions, please ask away in the comment section.
This is a good time. Does anybody have any questions?
Not at the minute, but I'm sure.
Wow, all right. That means we can jump right into the next one.
That's good.
So it's a good idea to chop your clay up before you use it again. That way, if there's any burnt bits or any bits of talcum powder, it's getting blended back through the rest of the clay. And you're not going to get little spots where your clay wants to come unstuck. You want it to be all nice and, I don't know, open to connection. Because if you've got a section that is just like a big piece of, I don't know, talcum powdered section, then when you do stick them together, they don't want to stick to the talcum powder section. So if we just blend that all together and all those little talcum powder sections are not there anymore, you're good. Or when you're cleaning up your flask after casting, you could just scrape off any of the clay that has talcum powder on it. But still, it's a good idea to make sure your clay is nice and broken up. And again, that's where the ruler is super handy. So it's got many uses. My personal favorite is being able to just scrape all that annoying clay out of the way.
So that's very neat there. And we've just got a couple of questions for you, Kirra-lea.
Yeah, go for it.
So what sort of mask is best?
What's it called? N93 or whatever it is. 95. N95 is what I use because it's just the best. It's going to stop everything if you're wearing it properly. I've been using RZ masks. That's their brand there. Before the pandemic, their quality was just top notch, just awesome. After the pandemic, or rather I should say during the pandemic, their quality did drop a bit, but I think they were dealing with high volume demand and they might have had to cut corners, or I'm not sure, just to fulfill orders. I haven't ordered from them again since, but I'm still impressed with their masks. Like, they are very comfortable, even if at the moment they're not lasting as much. So you can see that the neoprene in here is starting to break, which does happen, but it happened a lot faster with the lot I ordered during the pandemic. So I'm not sure what was happening there. I'm still happy with the mask though. I'm still going to use them. I decided they're worth it. They're just really comfortable masks.
Excellent. And we've got another question from Christine. What sorts of clay are okay to use?
This clay?
Well, she's saying what sorts of clay are okay to use. So, well, what do you use? And,
yeah, okay. So the sorts of clay that are out on the market, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That are okay to use. So if they're out in the market and you don't recommend them, you can tell them as well.
Alrighty. well, I've been using Delft clay for these videos because AJS supplies Delft clay, and they don't usually supply any of the other brands. So I can run through a bunch of the others that are on the market if you'd like. You can get Petrobond, which is, in my opinion, inferior. It's not as good. it's more for rough style work. It doesn't pick up as fine of details. It tends to be more crumbly. It is just a lower quality casting clay, but it might work for you. You might love it. I find maybe it's better suited for casting pieces for cars or bronze casting when you're casting, I don't know, like plaques or something. But for jewelry, for really fine detail, I find the Delft clay is a lot better. It picks up so much more of that fine detail. You are paying more for Delft clay, but that's because it's better. You know, you get what you pay for. Another clay that's on the market is red clay. Red clay is pretty much exactly the same as Delft clay. I've done a comparison video on the two of them. The only difference I noticed was that it smells differently and it's a little bit stickier, but that's so mild difference. Red clay is, you know, just as good as Delft clay. So they're both the best clay on the market. Red clay you can get from, I think it's DIY Casters. It's an American company. It's just one guy. It's an American guy named Craig Dabler. He makes it himself, which is pretty cool when it's just, you know, you're supporting one person and you know exactly where your money's going to and you know what that money's doing, which is pretty awesome. Which is another reason why if I'm buying Delft clay, I try to buy it through AJS because I know I'm employing all my buddies in the AJS company.
Good thoughts. Yeah, just some clarification from Christine. She said, I just wondered if non-casting clay would work like terracotta or porcelain clay. So
no. Not the same way. I would not suggest trying to cast with, say if you make an impression in just terracotta clay and it's unbisque fired or stoneware fired, don't do it because hot metal and water do not mix. So if you've got moist clay and you try and pour metal on it, it is going to explode. Do not put moisture anywhere near your clay and your molten metal. It's not a good idea.
Great warning. And Michael has asked, I would like to know what Kirra-lea's method of cleaning castings for Delft clay casting is.
Yeah, well, maybe that can be a video we do in the future, Peter, where I have a bunch of castings and I can show you different ways of cleaning them up.
Beautiful. Thank you for that suggestion there. It was made.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Thank you.
Back to you, Kirra-lea.
All righty. Let's do this next one. All right, pack your male half first, a little bit of clay in it, using your fingers to press it down. Really good habit to get into. And then you can just put handfuls in, really cram it in there. Cut off any of that excess clay. Let's put some baby powder down. Forever and ever, I've been using the same bottle of baby powder, whatever you call it, big container of it, because I just bought, I think it was like the family pack or something, you know, the hugest size. And this stuff just goes forever. So forever and ever, I've been using Johnson's baby powder, and it has a very distinct smell. Very recently, I had to buy more baby powder, and I've got a different brand. I don't even know what it is, you know, some sort of generic, maybe like Black and Gold or something. And it has a completely different smell. And it's really nice. Stuff. Yeah, it's not as nice. Like I notice it every time. Every time I'm like, oh, that's not my powder. That's a different powder. It's funny how you just get so used to a smell, because for years and years I've been using Johnson's. And so every time I smell this other baby powder, I just go, that's not Johnson's. That's not talcum powder. All righty, I'm going to press my object into about halfway. Cool. And this is where it gets a little bit different from every other time. All right, I've got my tube setting. And then, I couldn't decide between a green stone and a almost blue black. So I was like, let's put both of them out. Let's see what happens. Maybe let's do the green stone. All right, so this is where it gets a little bit different. So I'm going to press my chenille in. I'm going to press it in to about halfway as well. Now, with this style of bezel setting, you've got to make sure your stone actually fits inside of your tube. I'm just going to knock that little section out there. So it's got that little inside part of the chenier. I'm going to knock that out. I'm going to replace this. Alrighty. And now I'm going to get my stone and place it inside of that rub over setting, that bezel setting, the tube. So it has to sit inside of it nice and easy, which is a little bit different to what we've been doing before. And I'm going to get a little bit of this baby powder. I'm going to powder it behind that stone. Now I'm going to place the lady on top, the female, the 1920s wife. And I'm going to get some loose bits of clay. I'm going to press it down with my fingers first, make sure it's all nice and tightly packed around my object. And then I'm just going to put handfuls in. And I'm going to really go to town with this. I'm going to really, really compact it. Coolio. Any extra stuff, knock that off. Let's open it up. Okay, this is the part where it gets a little bit tricky because we want to make sure that the clay is nice behind this stone. It stays there. We want to make sure that that clay impression right behind that stone doesn't go anywhere. So let's really, really gently pull our objects out. We're going to really gently pull out this setting, and we've got to make sure we pull it out nice and vertical so that we're not going to pull it out on an angle and break that perfect clay on the inside, that perfect clay that's nestled right behind our stone. We've got to keep that intact, which is why I compacted the clay as much as I did, because we want to be able to see light through this setting. We want to be able to see the back of this stone. So what I might do is I might just gently push on that stone as I pull the setting out to try and keep all of that clay intact. Give it a little bit of a wiggle. Maybe spin it around a little bit if you can. Oh, tricky, tricky. Come on. Gotta find something else to hold that down. That is not any better. No. Come on. We really want to try and keep that clay intact behind the stone.
It does help if you talk to it like that. Is that true?
Sometimes, yeah. Yeah, talking to your work can help. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. I think that clay is probably going to get stuck behind that stone, and it has. Dang. Which is not really what we want. But let's see if I can fix it. Let's push that stone out. All right. That clay is all tucked up behind that stone. I'm going to get some pawpaw ointment, and I'm going to stick it on the table of that stone. It still has all that clay caught behind it, which is, oops, there it is. There's the clay. All right. Got some pawpaw on the table of that stone, and let's just place it back where it's meant to live, over here. And let's put a teeny tiny bit of pawpaw ointment on the back of that stone, because I'm not sure if you can see, but right here, that's that piece of clay that I really wanted to stay there, but it didn't, it came out. But it is compacted enough that I should be able to just stick it on the back of the stone. So I'm just going to put a little bit of pawpaw on the back of that stone to help encourage that bit of clay to stay in position behind the stone. And you've got to be really careful when you pick it up with your tweezers. Really, really careful.
Like watching a surgeon at work.
I know. I'm going to really, really carefully lay it down on top of that stone. I'll give it a little gentle push, just a little. Don't press it too much. Okay. Whew. Were you holding your breath? I was. Cool. All right. I'm going to set that aside. Do not mess with that side. Now I'm going to do my sprue hole and funnel. And I'm going to do it up the top here. Just cut right through that with my straw. And then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to carve out a funnel. Again, remember, nice and deep. Doesn't have to be wide. Deep is good though. Clean it out. Make sure it's no loose crumbly bits of clay. Got to be nice and smooth. Coolio. And get your object, press it back in. Make sure it's beautiful and crisp impression. Evan. I could do an air vent straight down here, but I really want the metal to come up and around this stone and cast it in place. So I'm actually going to place my air vent up here. So I'm just going to, maybe I'll just poke straight through. Yeah, I'll just poke straight through. No little line for this one. So just come out up here. It's okay if it's in your funnel. Just don't pour the metal on that part. And I'm going to get my little tube setting and I'm going to press it back in ever so gently just to clean up that little air vent I made, because it might have disturbed that clay and I want the back of it to be beautiful. Cool. So that's all done. Let's close and open. Oh, do I want to do that or just close it? I don't know. Do I feel lucky? Let's close and open. It's always a good idea just to check what's going on inside. It's better than going through all the effort of casting and then realizing it's not going to work after you've done it.
We've got our fingers crossed for you, Kirra-lea.
Thank you. All right, gently pull that apart. Cool.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Now, I don't know if I'm going to regret this, but I'm going to do a little bit of fussing, just so I can see a little grain sticking up out of the way. All right. Ooh, a little bit of fussing. I don't know why I do this to myself when I'm demonstrating. All righty, close it up and let's cast. And just give it a little squeeze. Even though I haven't done any fussing to press things in deeper, it's a good idea just to do it. It's a good habit to get into. Okay, let's go over to the other camera. What have we got? Let's whack in this scrap. Oh, look, an earring.
You've been looking for that?
No, I was just looking at this part of it and I was thinking, should I keep that? But I've only got one of them, so nah. And I can just make them anyway. Let's go a little bit more metal just in case. It's always a good idea to have more metal than less metal. There we go.
So you're confident you can avoid that air hole there when you pour it?
Yeah, I reckon. All right, remember, nice and hot, get it down the hole real fast.
You couldn't get more drama than this on your favourite soapy, Kirra-lea. Everyone's very keen to see how it's going to turn out.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Cool. Alrighty, mask on, or open that window, or turn on that ventilator. Ooh, drum roll.
Yeah.
Hopefully it worked. Okay, it's a good sign. Let's see. Ooh, all right. Let's get it out. So what I was going for is that the back of this cast in place stone was going to be completely open so that we'd be able to see the stone all the way through. Be able to see it from the back is what I mean. Let's have a look. Did I succeed? Oh, there's a little bit of spillage, but nothing I couldn't fix up. All right, so that's the stone there. And the back of it, other than this little piece here, like which is quite shallow, I'll just cut that off. I could probably even just use some pliers right now and pull that off because it's so thin. And that there, that's your the air vent.
Yep.
Which is good. So you can see the stone from behind. So if you've got a stone that looks really good with light coming through it, this would be a good option for it. Thank goodness that worked.
Indeed. I'll ask our viewers to give their thoughts on how she went.
Yeah. Woo. Again, like I said, it's not the most efficient way to do a bezel setting. You can just like bezel set it, but it's pretty cool being able to show someone that and say, yeah, I passed that in place.
Dawn's giving you a big thumbs up, so that's great.
Oh, good. Lots of fun. Well, that's all I actually had to show today. So I guess if there's a bit of extra time, we can just I can answer some questions.
Yeah, so we are getting near the end, but if people do have some questions on what Kirra-lea's been up to there, or some ideas or suggestions for the future.
Easy. And as usual, I'll take photos of them, close-up photos, and I'll put them in the comments underneath this video. So if people want a better view, because I know the video doesn't come across really well.
So Jane's going to watch the replay. Well done, Jane.
Fantastic.
Right, but that's fine. Definitely worth the watch, Jane.
Awesome. I agree.
Okay, yeah, Leanne says thank you, great work and tips. So thank you for that.
That's good. Get yourself some bolt cutters, because then you can just cut through that sprue, and you can use that button to cast your next piece. So you don't have to sit there with a saw blade and break 10 of them before you get through it, you know. But if you do get bolt cutters from like Bunnings, get the ones that have this extra articulation. It's like power steering for bolt cutters. And another thing I see people do when they're using the bolt cutters is they actually try and use their full strength to cut something. I like to just hold it on my hip or on a table, literally have one handle against the table, and then you just push down with your body weight, and that'll cut through it real easy as well.
And no truth to the rumor that you do your toenails with those also? Or?
No, they're Tony's toenail clippers, not mine.
But you don't do your toenails with them?
No. They have to use the chainsaw down at the nail salon.
James said, awesome, I was busy, but I would say thank you now because I know it will be great. There you go. She's thanking you in advance. And
Thank you
Juliet
very much.
says, what will you do these now? What we do on these now to finish them up?
Well, with this little guy here, I would I want it round? What was the original? The original was round, wasn't it? I'd probably go with a saw blade around the outside of this and cut that little flower pattern out. Because the original button was a bit like that. It's just a crappy button, really. So it's trying to be a nice flower pattern, but it's doing a bad job of it. But we can make it a beautiful flower pattern. So I would cut around the outside of this pattern and just have those little scallops the whole way around. I was actually going to turn this into a ring. So I would then solder it to a shank and then have that as a cute little ring. As for the surface, I would maybe really lightly emery, maybe. I'd be putting this in my magnetic tumbler, and it would be getting in between all of, in the recesses of this design. It would be getting in there and brightening that all up for me. So I wouldn't have to actually go in there and clean that up. And then I would blacken it, and I'd lightly rub it back. So just the very high points of this flower pattern stay bright and silver, and all the recesses will be dark. That's how I'd finish that one off.
Excellent. Great question. Great answer. Thank you very much, Kirra-lea. Bill has said, missed the start, but I'll be rewatching. Thank you. When you have a stone not set properly when you do multiple stones, do you just use solder to set it or do a gypsy set?
What was that? What's that question? Sorry.
If you've got multiple stones and one of them hasn't set properly.
Yeah. So it depends on the design. If it's really organic, I would go in there with little balls of silver, and I'd solder them around the stone and make it look like it's part of the organic rough design. But if it's something smooth and flush and looking a little bit more finished, a little bit more traditional, I would just hammer set it in there. So I'd pull that stone out or smash it out, depends how attached to it I am, and I'd just ball burr a new seat, and I would reseat it and rub it over and make it look all beautiful and flush like the rest of them. Or if I could grain set it, and then I could grain set the rest of them and make it look like they're all grain set, but actually they're cast in place. There's so many different ways you can do it.
Excellent. Thanks, Kirra-lea, and Bill said excellent as well. Alinka has said, what stone is this?
I'm using sapphires, Australian sapphires. From Coolamon Mine in Queensland. Family-run little mine.
And Liz has asked, could you use different compound in the magnetic tumbler?
Oh, look, I'm not that fancy. I don't understand all of that. I know you can. You can go through the different grades with the different shapes, and you can get it to like a mirror finish. You can make the tumblers clean it up for you. No, I just have my magnetic pin polisher. So it's got the tiny little needle shot, and all I use as a compound is a little bit of palm olive dishwashing liquid. That's it. Just a teeny squeeze.
How did we know that you'd be doing things a little bit different?
I didn't come up with that. Someone taught me that. I didn't make any of this. Oh, no, that's not true. I did stumble upon the stuff in the Delft clay, but when it comes to like cleaning up stuff, I don't usually just think of it myself. Normally I've seen someone do it or someone's told me to do it.
Excellent. Okay, well, we might wind up there. Thank you so much for your adventure once again. It was really exciting, great viewing, and we look forward to another adventure in stone casting to come up.
Yeah.
In sand casting. Sorry.
But our next demonstration will be bangles, casting bangles. And then maybe the one after that will be how to clean up your castings.
Excellent. And Anita said in the lapidary club.
What, sorry?
Oh, she mentioned something about the lapidary club. We also put bicarb soda in the tumbler.
Oh, okay. Yeah, all right.
Okay, lots of great questions, comments, and reactions. So once again, thanks very much, Kirra-lea. We'll see you next time. Excellent.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for watching. I'll take photos of these pieces and put them in the comments.
Thanks, Kirra-lea.
Until next time.